My name is Suna Harper, 26 years old, a marine biologist, working for a non-profit organization in San Diego that focuses on coral reef conservation. My life has always been tied to the ocean, quiet, methodical, and far removed from the sharp suits and relentless numbers that dominate the rest of my family. That's why I never imagined I would one day find myself sitting stiffly in a lawyer's office, listening to the formal reading of my grandfather's will. Across the polished mahogany table sat my older sister, Elise, 31, a sharp-minded investment analyst at a financial firm in Los Angeles. When the attorney announced that she was to inherit $7.2 million, her face barely moved, trained as always to mask emotion. The room buzzed with congratulatory murmurs, pride radiating from my mother, Vivian, who had always favored Elise's steady climb up the corporate ladder. Then came my turn. $1. A symbolic inheritance slipped across the desk along with an old, worn envelope. My mother's lips curled in the familiar disdain I had known all my life. "Some children never amount to anything," she whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. But before humiliation could take root, the lawyer cleared his throat. From the envelope, he drew out a sealed letter written in my grandfather's hand. As he read, silence thickened. What unfolded was not closure, but the opening move of my grandfather's final elaborate game. "If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories. They're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community." I grew up in La Jolla, California, in a neighborhood where appearances meant everything. Behind the manicured lawns, sleek cars, and ocean view mansions, families carried their pride like armor. My father, Leonard Harper, now 60, built his reputation as a high-powered real estate attorney, the sort of man who never walked into a room without checking his watch and adjusting his tie. His world revolved around contracts, acquisitions, and million-dollar deals, all pursued with relentless energy. My mother, Vivian, 58, had once been a polished PR director for a tech giant. After leaving corporate life, she reinvented herself as the owner of a luxury event planning company, orchestrating galas and fundraisers for San Diego's elite. For them, success was something you could measure in numbers, titles, and social standing. My sister, Elise, fit into that world effortlessly. A UCLA graduate, she cultivated connections as carefully as she curated her wardrobe. She had a smile that seemed permanently set in confidence, the kind that made strangers trust her and my parents beam with pride. To them, she was proof they had done everything right. Elise never stumbled. She climbed, step by step, toward power and recognition, and every achievement was celebrated like a family victory. I was the opposite. Where Elise loved networking events, I loved saltwater on my skin. I spent hours underwater, documenting coral bleaching, running lab tests, or sketching ideas for reef restoration. My heart beat for the ocean, not boardrooms. But in my parents' eyes, marine biology was a charming distraction at best, a hobby without a future, as they so often called it. They asked why I couldn't pursue law, finance, or at least something that would lead to a steady paycheck and respectable promotions. The only person who never tried to change me was my grandfather, Walter Brooks. A retired engineer, he had once founded Ocean Tech Solutions, a company that revolutionized seawater filtration technology. His inventions helped shape industries, and his fortune was more than enough to let him live lavishly if he wanted. Yet he chose a modest life. Instead of a mansion in La Jolla, he lived in a weathered wooden house in Big Sur, perched on a cliffside overlooking the restless Pacific. The house always smelled faintly of salt, cedar, and the black coffee he brewed at dawn. While my parents and Elise jetted off to Hawaii or Europe for summer vacations, I stayed behind with him. Those summers were the anchor of my childhood. We would spend mornings hiking along the coastline, afternoons cataloging tide pool creatures, and evenings sitting by the fire as he told me stories of inventions that once existed only in his sketches but later shaped the future. He showed me how to identify starfish species by the patterns on their arms, how to read the ocean's mood by the wind, and how to believe in ideas even when others laughed. "Money doesn't define your worth, Suna," he would say, adjusting the worn leather strap of his old wristwatch. My mother often sneered at that watch, calling it too plain for a man of his wealth. But to me, it carried more value than the glittering jewelry my mother flaunted at charity events. "What matters," he continued, "is what you give back. That's the true measure of a life." Family gatherings were always more difficult. I remember dinners where my mother would beam as she announced Elise's latest achievements, how she had just closed a deal with a rising tech startup or earned praise from a high-ranking executive. My father would nod in approval, sipping his wine before turning to me with a well-rehearsed sigh. "Suna, maybe it's time you thought about a real career," he'd say, as though conservation work was nothing more than child's play. "Something stable. You can't spend your life chasing waves and dreams." In those moments, I felt invisible, dismissed as though my passions were a phase I would eventually outgrow. Yet my grandfather never let their words crush me. He would lean back in his chair, eyes twinkling, and cut through the tension with a voice that carried quiet authority. "Not everyone lives to count money, Leonard," he would remind my father. His defense was never loud, but it was unwavering. That simple act, standing beside me when no one else did, became my lifeline. He gave me permission to be different, to choose a path that didn't glitter in society's eyes but shone in my own heart. Every summer memory, every fireside talk, every dive into the cold Pacific with him by my side formed a private world where I belonged. Looking back, those years with my grandfather were more than happy interludes, they were survival. Without him, I might have believed the voices that told me I was nothing more than a disappointment. With him, I learned to carry a quiet certainty that my life's work, no matter how small or unappreciated by my family, mattered. He had given me the gift of conviction. And now, sitting in that lawyer's office, staring at the envelope with my name scrawled in his familiar handwriting, I realized those summers had been preparation for something bigger. My grandfather had always played the long game. If he left Elise millions and me only $1, it wasn't because he thought less of me. It was because he had a plan. My grandfather passed away from lung cancer the year before, when I was 25 and immersed in a research project in San Diego Bay. His decline had been slow, but what struck me most wasn't his illness. It was the sudden attention he received from the rest of my family. My parents and Elise, who had often kept him at arm's length, began showing up at the hospital with extravagant gifts. Luxury blankets, rare wines, even limited edition gadgets cluttered his small room. I knew better. Their affection wasn't rooted in love but in expectation, their eyes fixed not on him but on the wealth they imagined he would leave behind. I stayed with him as I always had, not because of what he could give but because of who he was to me. We would spend quiet evenings flipping through science fiction novels or watching documentaries about the deep ocean. Even in his weakest days, his mind would light up when discussing the mysteries of the sea. He once whispered to me, voice thin but resolute, "The ocean endures, Suna. And so must you." A week after his funeral, we were summoned to the office of his lawyer, Thomas Reed, located in a sleek high-rise in downtown San Diego. The room was sharp with glass walls and leather chairs, designed for men in suits who measured time by contracts. My mother arrived first, wrapped in a fitted Prada dress, her gaze sweeping over me and lingering disdainfully on my plain work jacket. My father checked his Patek Philippe watch again and again, as if the ticking minutes of billable time mattered more than the moment we were in. Elise entered last, her Louboutins striking the marble floor, a Hermes bag draped effortlessly on her arm. She looked every inch the heir apparent. Mr. Reed adjusted his glasses and began the reading. The words cut cleanly, each inheritance listed like items on a ledger. Substantial donations to marine conservation organizations. generous provisions for long-serving employees. A beloved friend, Samuel Carter, granted the antique ship models my grandfather had collected over decades. My parents, Leonard and Vivian, were awarded a villa in Santa Barbara and a luxury condo in Miami. Elise, of course, was granted $7.2 million in a trust fund, her face composed though her eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. Then it was my turn. Mr. Reed's voice softened, almost apologetic. To my granddaughter, Suna Harper, I leave $1 and a sealed envelope, marked in my own hand. The room shifted. My mother's lips twisted into the cruel smile I knew too well. Well, that's clear enough, isn't it? Suna has always been surplus. She drew out the last word like a dagger. Elise's expression flickered between pity and triumph, as though she were simultaneously sorry for me and pleased with herself. My father exhaled sharply, already gathering his papers as though the matter were closed. But Mr. Reed held up his hand. There is more. He explained that my grandfather had left behind a video, one that was to be played in our presence. My father bristled immediately. I have a crucial meeting this afternoon, he snapped. This isn't necessary. Mr. Reed's eyes were steady. Mr. Harper, your father's instructions were explicit. Anyone who leaves before viewing forfeits their inheritance. The room froze. My mother's jaw tightened. Elise folded her arms, clearly annoyed at the delay. My father, after a long, frustrated glance at his watch, dropped back into his chair. Then the screen flickered to life. The image that appeared stole the air from the room. My grandfather, thinner than I remembered, sat propped in a chair, his skin pale, his body frail from the ravages of cancer. But his eyes, those sharp, penetrating eyes, remained fierce. If you are watching this, he began, his voice gravelly but resolute, it means I have gone. But before I left, I wanted to leave one final lesson for all of you. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the video. My mother clutched her handbag tighter. Elise leaned forward, lips pressed into a line. I sat motionless, my heart thundering as though I knew something in my life was about to change forever. In the video, my grandfather began by thanking his closest friends and longtime employees, his voice filled with warmth and respect. Then, his tone shifted as he turned to family matters. To my parents, he spoke without malice but with piercing honesty. Leonard, Vivian, I have always known that appearances and reputation meant more to you than the people in your own home. You built your lives around prestige, but prestige is fragile. I hope you learn before it's too late that love is the only thing that endures. My mother stiffened in her chair, her jaw clamped shut. My father's lips pressed into a grim line. Then my grandfather addressed Elise. His expression softened, though the intensity in his eyes remained. Elise, you are gifted in finance. You see patterns where others see only noise. That is a strength. But remember this, money is a tool, not a throne. Use it wisely, or it will consume you. Elise's fingers curled against the arm of her chair. Finally, his gaze settled on me. The harshness vanished, replaced by a gentleness that caught my breath. Suna, my dear child, you have always seen what others miss. Like the time you spotted the pod of humpback whales before the entire research team noticed a thing. You taught me that patience reveals what haste cannot. Remember what I told you, timing and endurance are everything. He paused, then delivered the revelation that froze us all. This what you've just heard is not the final truth. It is a test of character. I designed a series of tasks to measure what you value most. The envelope given to Suna contains the key to my house in Big Sur and the instructions for the first task. If any of you refuse to follow the rules, the entirety of my estate will be transferred to the Walter Brooks Ocean Conservation Fund. The silence was thunderous. My mother's face drained of color. My father scowled, his pride wounded. Elise gripped her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. I felt the envelope in my lap grow heavier by the second, as though it contained the weight of an entire legacy. That evening, I drove north to Big Sur. The decision was instant. Hesitation never crossed my mind. This was my journey, my grandfather's design, and I would not let the others twist it into their hunt for wealth. I didn't invite them. I didn't want them there. Yet as I unlocked the front door with the brass key engraved with a tiny whale, an old gift I had once given him, they appeared behind me. "We're here to support the family," my mother declared, her voice falsely sweet. My father offered no excuse, already eyeing the structure as if it were another property deal. Elise trailed behind, her gaze scanning the porch with something between nostalgia and suspicion. Inside, the house was unchanged. The scent of pine wood mingled with the faint must of old books. Shelves lined with marine biology texts and engineering journals rose high against the walls. For me, the air felt sacred, yet their presence suffocated it. My father began rifling through drawers in the living room. "There must be documents somewhere," he muttered. My mother wrinkled her nose, waving her hand dramatically. "This place smells moldy. How could he live like this?" Elise drifted toward the fireplace, running her fingers along the frames. "He has so many photos of you here," she said quietly, glancing at me with something unreadable. I slipped away to the study. The whale-shaped key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the space opened toward the vast Pacific, waves thundering beyond the window panes. A broad desk faced the horizon, maps of the world's oceans covering the walls. On the desk stood a photograph of my grandfather, much younger, in front of Ocean Tech Solutions' original headquarters. Laid neatly on the desk was a single sheet of paper. On it, a string of numbers stretched across the page, beneath which was a question written in his familiar hand. Where did it all begin? I stared at the numbers, my heart racing. It wasn't random. I knew the sequence. These were his earliest investments, the $4,500 he risked in 1979 to start building Ocean Tech. My grandfather's game had begun, and somehow I was holding the first clue. As my family rummaged through drawers and shelves, I noticed something different about the rug in the corner of the study. It was slightly raised at one edge, as though it had been shifted recently. Instinct urged me to pull it back. Beneath the rug lay a square outline cut into the wooden floorboards. My breath caught. A hidden compartment. I pried it open and discovered a small safe embedded in the floor. Combination was a mystery until my eyes drifted across the desk. A yellowed newspaper clipping rested under a stack of journals. The headline read, Ocean Tech Solutions acquired by Global Dynamics, July 20th, 1998. My pulse quickened. Could it be that simple? I keyed in July 20th, 1998. Click echoed in the silence. The door swung open. Inside lay a thick leather-bound journal and another sealed envelope marked with my name. My parents immediately crowded around, their voices sharp. "Open it now," my father demanded. "This concerns all of us," my mother added, her manicured hand already reaching forward. I drew the items close to my chest. "No," I said firmly. Grandfather's instructions were explicit. Task is mine alone. If you interfere, everything reverts to the conservation fund. Their faces darkened, but they couldn't argue against the terms they had heard with their own ears. That night, I checked into a modest inn in Big Sur, a world away from their pressing gazes. The room smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. Heart pounding, I tore open the envelope. The journal was filled with my grandfather's neat handwriting, page after page cataloging not only memories but also meticulous records. The revelation hit like a tidal wave. His true estate was worth $35 million, spanning real estate, stocks, and patents from his water filtration innovations. The official will had been a facade, a screen for the real game. At the back of the journal, a letter waited for me. Suna, to understand what is at stake, you must revisit ocean tech. Begin with the past. The truth lies buried in the choices others made for me. Shaken, I contacted Mr. Reed the next morning. Hours later, my inbox overflowed with scanned documents. Contracts, memos, transaction records, all tracing back to 1998 when Ocean Tech was sold. Pieces fell together with brutal clarity. My parents had orchestrated the sale. My father, acting as legal counsel, had advised Walter that competitors were circling, ready to undermine the company's value. My mother, working as a strategic consultant for the purchasing conglomerate, urged a quick sale for protection. But the so-called threat had never existed. It was theater. Ocean Tech, then valued at tens of millions, had been handed over for just $2 million. And for their betrayal, they were rewarded a $900,000 commission, split quietly between them. I stared at the documents, fury rising like fire in my chest. My hands shook, but my grandfather's words echoed in memory. The truth will always surface, Suna. Be patient. I forced my breathing to slow. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about justice. That evening, I drove back to the house. The sun was sinking into the Pacific, painting the sky with streaks of orange and crimson. On the wooden deck overlooking the waves, my family waited, restless and suspicious. Without a word, I spread the papers across the weathered table. My mother's memo to the CEO of Global Dynamics, my father's falsified legal assessment, the commission agreement bearing their signatures. The evidence was undeniable. You betrayed him, I said, my voice unsteady but loud enough to cut through the wind. You stole his life's work. You sold his legacy for your own gain. My mother's eyes narrowed. Don't be melodramatic. It was business, Suna. You're too naive to understand. Elise stepped forward, her face pale, her confidence cracked. She turned to them, voice trembling. Is it true? Did you really do this to Grandpa? The silence that followed was heavier than the crashing surf below. The tension in the room was already unbearable when a knock echoed against the heavy oak doors. A courier stepped in, holding a sealed envelope with Walter Brooks's insignia embossed in silver. He handed it to Reed with a quiet nod before retreating. Reed read the note clipped to the front and raised his brow. Your grandfather's instructions. This is to be opened only when the truth has surfaced. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The words were stark, written in my grandfather's distinct, steady hand. Suna, if you are reading this, then you already know about Ocean Tech Solutions. Betrayal by those closest to us is the deepest wound of all. Yet I believe in redemption. This will is my final test of character. Before I could process his words, Reed gestured toward the door. A tall man in a charcoal suit entered, Daniel Pierce, a security consultant. He carried a sleek black case and spoke with measured calm. 2 weeks ago, hidden surveillance cameras were placed throughout this home. By Mr. Walter's explicit directive. Gasps erupted as he placed a tablet on the desk. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage. My mother tearing apart family albums, rifling through drawers. My father speaking on the phone, discussing selling the house immediately after the funeral. Unacceptable! My mother shouted, face flushed with rage. This is a violation of privacy. Reed's voice cut through her protests. Mr. Brooks retained full rights to monitor his property. Notices were posted. You simply chose not to notice. The weight of silence fell. Reed turned to me. Suna, the decision now rests with you. Prosecute your parents for fraud, or honor your grandfather's alternative plan. My mother's face contorted. Suna, we're family. You cannot destroy us like this. Tears streaked her cheeks, but I sensed manipulation woven into every word. My father, his voice gravelly, tried another route. Think carefully, daughter. You'll ruin us. Is that truly what you want? Before I could answer, Elise rose to her feet. Her voice, steady yet filled with shame, broke the stalemate. Let Suna decide. We've wronged her long enough. And I need to admit something, our finances are a mess. Mother and father have been drowning in debt for years, clinging to this lifestyle. They pinned all their hopes on grandfather's inheritance. Her confession landed like a hammer. My chest ached, but I finally understood the cracks in their facade. I will not prosecute, I said slowly, every word weighted with resolve. But I will honor grandfather's vision. Reed nodded and opened another folder. Mr. Brooks's contingency plan designates $35 million to be placed into a trust under Suna Harper's stewardship. The trust is dedicated to ocean conservation, scientific research, and ethical investment initiatives. Gasps filled the room again. My parents stared at me, stricken. Reed continued, "You will retain your properties, but under one condition. You must undergo family counseling, contribute time to community service and conservation projects, and deliver a public apology to Walter Brooks at the inaugural event of the trust." No, my mother wailed, clutching her pearls as though they might shield her. My father bowed his head, fists clenched in helplessness. Elise, however, stepped forward with rare conviction. I agree. I'm tired of the deception. I want to do what's right. Her words steadied me. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. My grandfather's last move had been deliberate, a checkmate crafted not with money but with truth. And now I had the power to decide how the next chapter would be written. 6 months later, the Brooks estate in Big Sur had transformed completely. The house that once carried the weight of silence, suspicion, and decades of unspoken resentment now vibrated with new energy. Volunteers came and went, carrying boxes of research equipment. Students from universities gathered in the great room to attend lectures about marine life. What had been my grandfather's quiet sanctuary became the headquarters of the Walter Brooks Ocean Conservation Trust. For me, the change was both external and deeply personal. Each morning, I walked the same trails my grandfather used to love, the salty wind brushing against my skin as I planned the day's projects. We were working on restoring reefs in Hawaii, funding sustainable fishing practices in Indonesia, and running scholarship programs for students who, like me years ago, had dreams but not enough resources. Every time I signed an approval or shook hands with a young researcher, I felt as though my grandfather was standing beside me, whispering, "Patience, Suna! You see what others miss." My parents, those same people who once put reputation above love, were changing too, though painfully slowly. My father surprised me when he joined a seawater filtration project. First, I thought he was doing it out of obligation, but then, late one evening, he called me. His voice carried something I hadn't heard in years: excitement. "We tested a new filter design today, Suna. It worked better than expected. Imagine the number of communities this could help." That call reminded me of the man I vaguely remembered from childhood, the one who once built a small wooden sailboat for me before ambition hardened him. My mother's transformation was more fragile. In one therapy session, she brought an old photograph I had never seen before, her as a teenager at a county fair standing next to my grandfather. Her hands trembled as she admitted, "He taught me not to fear failure." But I forgot that lesson. Tears streamed down her face, and for the first time in years, I didn't see her as the woman who belittled me. I saw her as a daughter who had lost her way. Elise, too, left her old life behind. She had built her identity on high-stakes investments and relentless ambition, but after the chaos with the inheritance, she confessed she felt hollow. "I'm tired of chasing numbers that don't mean anything," she told me. She resigned from her firm and began teaching financial literacy to underprivileged teens in programs funded by the trust. I watched her eyes light up when a student grasped compound interest for the first time. She was finally using her skills for something that gave her joy, not just prestige. Our family dinners became a weekly ritual. Not the stiff, uncomfortable gatherings of the past, but genuine moments where we ate simple food, shared stories, and sometimes even laughed. It wasn't perfect. Old wounds don't disappear overnight, but there was honesty. And that honesty was a foundation we had never truly had before. One evening, while leafing through one of my grandfather's worn marine biology books, I found a small folded paper. It was his handwriting, unmistakable. The truth will unsettle you, but it will set you free. Love always, grandfather. I carried that note with me down to the pier. The ocean stretched endlessly, its surface glistening under the pale light of the moon. I breathed deeply, realizing that my grandfather's greatest gift wasn't wealth, wasn't property, wasn't even the trust itself. His true legacy was courage, the courage to face painful truths, to stand firm in integrity, and to protect what truly matters. That inheritance was priceless, and I vowed to honor it every day. 5 lessons I learned. Truth hurts, but it heals. Discovering betrayal within my own family broke me, but it also freed me. Lies are heavy. Truth, even painful, lifts the weight from your chest. Money reveals character. Wealth is neither good nor bad. It's a mirror. In my family, greed and fear were exposed, but redirected wealth became a tool for healing and change. Change is possible, even for those you least expect. Watching my parents face their mistakes showed me that redemption is real. Maybe slow, but hearts can shift. Family is built on honesty, not perfection. Our weekly gatherings are messy and imperfect, but truth and vulnerability are more valuable than any facade of unity. Legacy is not about what you leave, it's about who you inspire. My grandfather's fortune could have divided us forever. Instead, his wisdom gave me the courage to build something bigger than myself. That is the inheritance I will carry. If this story touched you, I invite you to walk this path with me. Please like this video, share it with friends who might need encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Together, we can continue exploring stories of truth, resilience, and the legacies that shape us. Your support means the world, and it helps keep these lessons alive for others who need them. Because at the end of the day, wealth fades, reputations shift, but the courage to live honestly, that is what endures.